All right, welcome into Cleveland Browns Daily on a Tuesday. I'm skipping ahead. Tuesday edition. I wish it was Thursday. It's a Tuesday edition of the program. Lots of things starting to run together today, boys,
Yes.
on a Tuesday edition. I am merely Beau, as evidenced by that intro. He is the great Z. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. I was got to tell you, though, I was a little disappointed last night.
Oh, you don't say.
Because I was, I was watching some Outlander with
Yeah.
my lovely bride, and I, was keeping an eye on
Sure.
the score, and I was waiting for, okay, well, it's going to get close, and then I'll come in here in the second half, and it's going to be great. It never got close. It was the first time I looked, it was 16-4. And it basically, I think they cut it to 10 at the half, and that was it. I mean, every time I looked, it was a double-digit lead, and it didn't seem to be changing, and clearly it was not.
Yeah, and you really, from that description, were like a quarter invested. So you weren't even all in to this for the excitement of this. This was something where you were dual screening this. So this wasn't even like you were all in. You first looked over, it was 16-4, so that you don't even have the full heartbreak of this. This is something that you'd waited for a long time. These are the two best teams. There aren't many instances of this where the two best teams, this thing is over last night. I want to say it's 17:30, 17:56 left in the first half. It's, I want to say something like 9-0, and Jalen Suggs has two fouls, including the most ridiculous offensive foul that you'll see to start a game. He's got two fouls, and he's on the bench for the next. It's over then.
Over.
It's over. It's over at 9-0, or whatever, 9-1, whatever it was. I think it was 11-1, something like that. It's done. The game's over. To your point, they got it close at half. To Gonzaga's credit, they fought. They didn't quit. They fought. They cut it to 9 with about 8 minutes or something like that to go. They had two empty possessions, and it went to 16, and it was over. And it reminds me now where they will go, which is just a list of teams that were near perfection, and certainly the Patriots, that comes to mind with them. You think of them. You think of some of the college football teams through the years. But also just kind of the reminder of how hard it is to line it all up. Baylor was so dominant, so clearly the best team, so physically dominant. And honestly, it sucked. It really sucked. Because there was a tremendous amount of buildup to this. To your point, I was completely invested, and I was waiting for the run. But it wasn't coming. And if you were honest with yourself and you were watching in the first 3 minutes, it was over. Gonzaga could not initiate offense. They could not dribble the ball against the strength of the Baylor guards. And it was, one of those things that just really fell flat. And it reminded me a little bit of this year's Super Bowl where you just kept, let's go, Chiefs, let's go. Come on, let's go. And they couldn't. They couldn't go. And sometimes that happens where you don't have it. I mean, we saw it a little bit in the national championship game with Ohio State and Alabama. All right, let's go. No. There's no gear. That's it. It's done. And that was the case. It was wildly disappointing. Wildly.
It is what the great Vincent Kennedy McMahon would say was the great advantage of professional wrestling, in that oftentimes in sports, you can have something that is hyped and built up. It is going to be, one versus two, this great, unbelievable game. And sometimes you get it, but sometimes you don't. Just like a great boxing match. Sometimes it's over in 5 seconds.
Yep.
Professional wrestling will always deliver for you that great main event.
A script will help with that.
That's right. A script will write.
Yeah.
That does, and no, the ability that the game cannot be finished until a certain set of things have happened and thresholds have been met.
Right. Yeah, it was something. And I think the other thing with and don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but the other thing I would say is Baylor had a COVID outbreak in February.
Yep.
And coming out of it, they got whipped by Kansas, like 71-59 or something like that, on a very average Kansas team. I mean, not a great Kansas team, an average Kansas team. And they got whipped. And then they got beat by Oklahoma State in the Big 12 tournament. And that provided a prejudice for them in the tournament that was not just for who they really were. And what you've seen over the course of March and the tournament is what they really were. There were always two teams this year. Those were the two teams. I think it would have helped Gonzaga if they would have played them early, because they would have known what they were getting into from a physicality standpoint. They just weren't ready for it. they got punched in the mouth, and they had no answer. And I think if that game early in the season would have happened, it would have helped them quite a bit. But congratulations to Baylor. Last thing on this, you are aware, or are you aware, of the circumstances in which Scott Drew took over that program?
No.
Do you remember this?
No.
He took over the program from Dave Bliss, who, on his watch, a Baylor player murdered a Baylor player. Dave Bliss not only covered up the murder, but also threw shade at the victim of the murder.
Wait, what?
Said he was a drug dealer.
Was I living under a rock?
Yeah.
When did this happen?
No, you were at Emory. This all happened. No, you're probably done with Emory. You could have been. You could have been with McKinsey, knee deep in work.
Yeah, probably.
This happened. This happened at Baylor, and that is the circumstance that Scott Drew took over. He didn't take over Kentucky or Duke or Carolina. Like, this is a program with no history of winning, and he took over following a murder. A player killed another player on their roster, and that's what he took over, and they just won the national title.
There was sexual harassment. There was a ton of stuff going on with Baylor athletics as a whole.
Tons.
And then,
Football.
And then that murder happens.
Murder.
Yeah.
Murder.
Like, everybody's –
and the coach covered up and said
covered
that the
up.
guy, the victim, was a drug. It was a drug thing, is what he said. Yeah. Murder.
Everybody said the Baylor program that they should be. It should go away and never come back.
Done.
Baylor basketball.
And they always have had a very good women's program. At least maybe not always, but last 10 years.
Well, last 20 years
20
for
years.
sure.
Okay.
They've won national titles.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And really, their athletic program is almost came out of nowhere. Really,
Yeah.
they've got a lot of money but I mean, they've really built everything in the last 20 years. A really good football program, despite a bunch of controversy. And now men's and women's basketball have won national titles and are both really, really good. But the program he inherited was one that was the scandal, and there's no bigger than that. I mean, it's as big as it gets. All right, let's get into the LBM Hot Topics. Ohio Business Machine, preferred copy provider of your Cleveland Browns. Of all the X's and O's for your office, call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. This happens right after we got done with the show. I was alerted to this by Gibbe. Sam Darnold has a new home. Carolina gives up a sixth-rounder, a second, and a fourth next year for Darnold. Really small price for a guy who's picked in the top 5.
Sure.
He is the first. This deal now means that Baker Mayfield is the only quarterback drafted in the top 5 from 2015 to 2018 who is still on the team who drafted him.
Wow.
And they've taken a lot of quarterbacks in those drafts. In those 4 drafts are quarterbacks taken throughout, and he's the only one left on the original team, only Baker. When you first saw this news, your thoughts were what?
That it doesn't surprise me somebody was willing to take a shot at Sam Darnold. The fact that it was Carolina is what surprised me, I think, maybe the most. Robbie Anderson must have vouched for him. I would think that there had to be something on that level. You've got DJ Moore, so you've got 2 good receivers there. You've got a nice running back, obviously one of the best in the game in McCaffrey. I'm guessing that because of everything that's happening surrounding Deshaun Watson, which is getting a little bit more interesting by the day, that they were out on that. And so reportedly they were very in on Deshaun Watson. And
Everybody,
now,
a month ago, that's all we heard was Carolina
Yep.
for Deshaun. Yeah.
They must feel after the 49ers move that their ability to get the quarterback that they want in the draft is looking highly unlikely. And so they took a shot here on Sam Darnold, which means they're kind of pushing it down the road. Now they still have to work out things with Teddy Bridgewater, who played very well for them, I think, all things considered. But they paid him again. They paid him a lot of money last year. They're going to pay Darnold I think it's 19 guaranteed this year. Bridgewater last year, almost 70% completions, 3,700 yards, 15 touchdowns, 11 picks, ran for another 5 touchdowns and 300 yards. I mean, he put together a better season last year than Sam Darnold's ever had in his career. But Sam Darnold's upside is obviously more significant, and so they're taking a gamble that they can be the ones, and you get him away from Gase, and he can have a Tannehillian resurgence. Why not? I wanted for Darnold personally, I wanted him to go to Denver.
Yeah.
Get in that situation, loaded at receiver, loaded at tight end. John Elway's there. He loved you coming out of college or even to go to Kyle, but it's kind of a surprising move. I don't know if it's one that would make me think that, oh, boy, I want more shares of Sam Darnold stock now than I did when I didn't know where he was going. This would be one of those where you buy the hype, sell the news, because you're thinking maybe he ends up in Denver, maybe, whatever it could be. An interesting move overall is what I think. But you didn't pay a ton, and you're taking a swing at the plate again this year. If it doesn't pan out, you probably feel like you might be in a position next year to take a good quarterback once again. So I'm a little bit surprised at the destination. Not at all surprised that Sam Darnold moved. Was just more surprised that Carolina was the one who went calling.
So a couple of things. The one thing about the Tannehill-Darnold, and that's a smart comparison from the standpoint of the circumstances. And by the way, of course, Gase is the common denominator.
Sure.
Darnold hasn't shown how much of it's his fault, how much of it's the circumstance. He has not been as good as Tannehill was in Miami.
At any point. Agreed.
At any point. People really didn't realize, and I was among them, did not realize how good Ryan Tannehill actually was in Miami. There was this misconception that he was some disaster. He was not. Darnold was a disaster with the Jets. How much of that's on him? How much of it's on the circumstance? It's probably blame to go around. But Tannehill did flash brilliance in Miami. To lead you, there should have been more smoke around him being good somewhere else than there was based on his play in Miami. In other words, his play in Miami is far superior to anything we've seen from Darnold with the Jets. So that needs to be out there. The second thing that I thought of, and again, we continue to do the show in the great state of Ohio, is that is a place I thought Justin Fields could land, is in Carolina. I didn't sense that he would get past there. I thought that was the bottom of the line for him was at number 8 to Carolina. So that leads me to believe that either they believe that Justin Fields is going 3 to San Francisco, which I don't believe. I think it's probably Lance at number 3 to San Francisco. Seems to make the most sense to me despite all the Mac Jones talk. Or that the price was too high for them to go all the way to 4 to get the quarterback that they really wanted. And we know now that Atlanta is looking to trade that pick. So someone – and Atlanta's price for Carolina is going to be higher than anyone else's.
Yep.
They're not going to trade a potential pick
division
to take a franchise quarterback in the division.
Yep.
So that comes to mind. You say, okay, Carolina says, look, we're not going to get the guy we want at 8 because it's possible that quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4 in this draft. We don't have the ammo. Now that San Francisco's come up, we don't have the ammo to get to 4. Atlanta's not trading for us, but they're going to be open to other people to trade for. So we're not going to get the quarterback we want at 8. Let's go see what else we can do. Hey, Joe Brady, what do you think about Sam Darnold's tape? Talks to Robbie Anderson. Yeah, I can work with this. All of those things make sense. The other thing, and honestly, this is the thing that I thought of first, is Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
And this has nothing to do whether you think whatever you want to believe or whatever you think the just outcome is on this. He is now at a position based on the lawsuits that have been filed, the individual reporting that has been done from other witnesses / victims,
Sure.
alleged victims, and from in my view, from his own attorney putting out there that 20 other masseuses that he's worked with.
Right. Say he's great.
So
yeah.
it's a red flag minimum, because you say, wow, 40-some masseuses have worked on this guy in the last few years? That's a lot. It's just too much smoke. So now, whether he's guilty or not, it's too much. Right?
Yes.
So you say, if from both sides, if you're Carolina, you now say, all right, we can't justify giving up the farm for Watson. There's no way. There's way too much uncertainty. Conversely, if you're Houston, you're not budging off your asking price, because if this is all not true, and if he's cleared, and if he's not guilty, all of those things. And again, he's not even been tried. There's no charges filed. There's nothing. It's just a lot of speculation and lawsuits that have been filed. But there's a lot of smoke to it. Houston's not going to trade him for less than dollar for dollar amount.
No.
They're not selling for 10 cents on the dollar. He's their most valuable commodity. So it now appears to me, and probably to Carolina, that there's no path that they can sell, either giving up all those assets for Deshaun Watson with the uncertainty, or Houston doing it for 10 cents on the dollar. So you're at a stalemate. And this is where you end up.
You are and that was a tremendous summation of all of the events that have happened, because you are at a stalemate right now. Now, Deshaun Watson says he doesn't want to play with the Texans. That's where he plays football is probably the least of his concerns at this moment.
Yes.
Way down
at this
the list.
point.
He has no value in the trade market right now because so much is going on. And kind of apropos of this is the fact that Tony Busby, the lawyer representing the now 22 women, is holding a press conference at this very moment, and it now is starting to introduce the women by name, putting their names on it. It was all anonymous. Ashley Solis is the first person who sued Deshaun Watson. She's present at the press conference today. So he's holding a presser right now. And, boy, this is – and here's a quote from her. "I hope my story gives them the courage to speak out. It's taken me a long time to speak my truth. I was afraid. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm here to take back power, take back control. I'm a survivor of assault and harassment." This is not going to get any better. This is going to be you're right. He is not a tradable commodity right now because you don't know the legal ramifications of what are happening and what will happen. And so, the rest of the league's got to move on. The team that's ironically in all of this, and, there have been the conspiracy theories out there that this was a Texans revenge game at him, whatnot. The Deshaun Watson and the Texans are now in a worse spot for this than they were when they were in a bad spot where you had a team saying, "I'm not going to trade you. You're our quarterback."
Yep.
And all of a sudden, him saying, "I'm not playing there." But 31 other teams have to go about their business. And so that's what they're going to do. And Deshaun Watson is either going to come out of this as, if it gets to a criminal situation, which there are rumors now that there will be some criminal complaints filed. So far, it's all civil.
All civil at this point.
That if it does move towards, any type of criminal complaints, there could be, obviously, league punishment handed down.
Sure.
There's going to be there are a lot of variables still to play with this, but the main point is Deshaun Watson right now, you can't say anything about him. You can't picture him on the Texans. You can't picture him on another football team. You can't picture anything with Deshaun, and thus the Carolina Panthers, he may have been the one they coveted. Guess what? If he comes through this and is playing football again, which I believe he will at some point, he is going to be I guarantee if he thinks the Texans had anything at all to do with this in any way, shape, or form, I think he's never playing for the Texans again. I think the question now is he playing in the NFL again?
Again, yes. But next year is in question.
Certainly.
And it's just so this was, I think in the end, this was their only path forward when you factor in all of what we just kind of laid out there. This was their only path forward to in their view, and I'm very curious to see how Sam Darnold plays in a stable environment. This was their only path forward to, in their view, dramatically improve their quarterback position. And they did it without giving up much for a guy who was valued, just a couple of years ago as a top 5 player in all of the draft, and Mel Kiper Jr. said would be, the number 3 quarterback in this year's draft if he came out. So that's why you take this swing if you're Carolina. Mick Mixon will join us at the 2 o'clock hour on their perspective on all of those things. Coming up next, Aaron Rodgers on Jeopardy at the bottom of the hour. Brent Sobleski, NFL analyst for the Bleacher Report, great friend of the program with a lot to get to on our team. We will get into that coming up in about 15 minutes from now. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. live and breathe football, sometimes keeping your priorities straight can be a challenge. Unfortunately, the same can be true when you gamble. If you find your gambling is affecting other parts of your life, get some help. Get tips on responsible gambling at KeepItFunOhio.com. It is Tuesday at the Masters, of course. Champions dinner tonight. What would be yours? What are you serving?
I bet you could answer that.
King of meats?
Yeah.
King of meats?
Prime rib, crab leg, Caesar salad.
Yep.
And then if somebody had a real somebody had a real strong feeling on, whether it be some type of, a creamed corn, or whether they wanted a roasted garlic mashed potato, if they wanted, some rosemary fries or sweet potato fries, whatever. Maybe even, I don't know, a nice portobello,
that's really
ravioli and pesto. I don't know.
It doesn't even matter on
Doesn't
those
matter.
things.
No.
Because the only thing I would change different from you is I would probably have some sort of an ahi tuna, either sashimi or something like that would be involved. And then I would have the ribeye, over the prime rib. So I would have the ribeye and the crab legs. But the crab legs and the beef, that's living. That's how you do it.
That's the
Gibby,
dream.
what would you serve? What are you serving, Gibby?
That's a great question. I might need to go with like an Italian theme.
A little pasta with Gibby.
Some wine.
Well, there's definitely going to be wine, Gibby.
I mean,
Get a lot of Screaming Eagle.
Number one,
flying
you have
around.
to start the meal. Everybody has to do a shot of Jameson. Like, it's the champion's prerogative. Y'all have to do a shot.
Wow.
Right off the bat.
Tell it Hootie Johnson. Hootie, bottoms up.
Line up the shots. We're going to do one. Just one. We got a long week in front of us. I would think some kind of Italian.
What's your go-to? What's your go-to
What's your
thing?
Italian go-to?
Yeah.
I
a little
really,
asabuco.
I like food.
A
I
little.
like food.
A little.
I got a
Little chicken parm, little veal parm.
little
I
veal
do
parm?
love I love
Eggplant
all the
parm?
parms.
What about
I
the
like a little eggplant parm.
What about the chicken parm pizza from Quality Italian in New York? That would be a nice starter for your festivities.
Okay.
That's one of the
That
greatest
sounds decadent.
appetizers. Have I not told you about this?
Not about that.
Oh,
You told
all
me
right.
about the place, but not
So,
the food.
Quality Meats was the place that I used to go when I was working for CBS every Saturday night. We would go there. It was unbelievable steakhouse, my favorite in New York City. And then we would go, and it's up. It was close to where I was staying, so like 56th and 6th, that area.
Yep.
And then they opened Quality Italian a couple blocks away. Maybe Quality Meats is 56th and 9th, and Quality Italian's 56th and 6th or 7th, one of those two. Quality Italian has, they call it a chicken parm pizza. And what you get, and this is the best shared app I think that I've ever had in my life. It comes out, it looks like a pizza, except that what is the crust is pounded out thin chicken, breaded chicken. That's your crust. And then you get
The crust is the chicken?
Yes.
Well, then. This
Then
is
you get
interesting.
your marinara. Then you get your mozzarella, and that's melted. So it comes out and it looks like a pizza, and they even puff up the end so there's a crust on it. But that crust, it's the chicken, and they cut it like a pizza. And
Wow.
then underneath they have all these things you could top it with. But they
Okay.
have a Calabrian chili infused honey with those old school like honey things that are wood, where the honey really gets in there nice.
Sure.
And you can drizzle it out off of your honey stick. I'll tell you,
So decadent.
it is as good
That's a
as it
treat.
gets. Yes. Maybe that would be the appetizer.
Boy,
of my
that's a
dinner
real
now.
treat.
I think I might set up stations. Like, I don't want a formal sit down.
Oh, Gibby wants to have a buffet.
I want stations. Like, at this station, you got
Hootie
your
is
parm.
throwing your ass
At
out,
this
Gibby.
station, you got a
Not
little
happening.
Get out of here
lasagna.
with your stations.
This station
Your
got a little
stations.
lasagna. Yeah, he's throwing you out, Gibby.
That's
They're not
fine.
having that.
I've
They
been
got
thrown
people
out of
to
far
serve down
classier
there.
places.
I don't know about that.
I don't know if you could. Did you see DeChambeau swinging, by the way? What a maniac that guy
Okay,
is.
VJ
What is he
Singh's
doing?
watching him as though he's like pained by the. I mean, those are ridiculous. That's not how you hit a golf ball.
No.
He's swinging like
He's going to get hurt.
he's got to.
He's going to get hurt. He's going to shred his knee, or he's going to do like the
How's
Tatis
his
kid did
back
yesterday
okay?
and throw his arm out on his swing. No, it won't be. This is not tenable. Like, this will end.
This
this
aggression
isn't
will
gonna end
not
well for
stand.
him. No. I mean, if what happened to Tiger's body happened to Tiger's body, and he was not packing that type of weight and did not swing like a maniac, although with tremendous force, There's just no way this kid this is going to be something that stands.
The one thing that I would say, if there's one thing I would say, is that he makes one swing. All of his clubs are the exact same length. Everything he does is the same.
Yeah.
So he's not putting a lot of different spine angles on himself. He's not. It's one move that he is grooving, albeit in an insanely
The
violent
torque.
fashion. The
Yeah.
torque that he
I don't.
creates is really, it's hard to even get your head around.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I just don't, I don't think it's anything that stands the test of time at all. Brent Sobleski does stand the test of time, and he will join us on myriad topics coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. I'm just going to tell you, folks. There's the show within the show. The show on the Zoom when we're not doing Cleveland Browns Daily, that's a show. Like, you remember when George Costanza was like, well, why is it a show? Because it's on TV. Not yet. That's a show. Like, that conversation we just had with Gibby about his Masters meal in the break.
It's unbelievable.
Was unbelievable.
It's hard to even
unbelievable.
have anybody fathom what we just heard.
No, you can't. Which is why we will not put Brent up to that. Brent Zableski joining us, NFL analyst from Bleacher Report, joining us. Brent, thanks so much for taking the time. Let's just dig in on where we stand here. Less than a month before the draft. We certainly like a lot about what we did, but also acknowledge that there are a couple of things still out there. It's comforting knowing that we could field a team right now, especially, obviously the same team's come back offensively, but defensively that is markedly better than the one that ended last year, but also acknowledge that there are still some things out there to be done. How do you assess what Andrew Berry has done in his second year here this offseason so far, still acknowledging the draft is out there?
Well, first and foremost, gentlemen, thank you for having me as always. And you're absolutely correct, Beau, when you look at the organization and how they've built coming into this offseason. One of the things I discussed when during multiple interviews prior to the start of the new league year was, what do the Cleveland Browns need to do? Well, they need 1, defense, 2, defense, and 3, defense. And so now they've addressed all 3 levels of that side of the ball to success, in my opinion. When you have Takris McKinley coming in at defensive end with the potential he brings, Malik Jackson, who can play both interior and defensive end, depending on your formations and how you want to roll your rotation along your defensive line. Anthony Walker is a tackle machine, average over 100 tackles per year over the last 3 seasons, and we'll see how he really helps that linebacker core. And then finally, and most importantly, is the secondary. I think 2 of the best deals we've seen this offseason with John Johnson III, who is on average the 8th highest paid safety in the NFL. When you consider how well-rounded he is, that is a phenomenal number. And then Troy Hill might have been the steal of this year's free agency, at least in my opinion, based on the valuation Cleveland got him at, and considering he was the top pure nickel corner in this year's free agent class, number 1 graded nickel corner in coverage over the last 2 seasons. So looking at it, I think they've done an exemplary job. But they're not done. You still have to look at outside corner, dependent on Greedy Williams' health, and you can still address defensive end for long-term success.
And Brent, when you with that kind of comprehensive look and where we stand, you mentioned, I'm with you, outside corners is the biggest need. I know you had a story out over the weekend. You said that was the biggest need for the Browns. Is that what you have your eyes on more than any other position now for pick 26? And if so, who are some of the guys that you would love to see come to the Browns?
It is, and it's not a slight against Greedy Williams. I think he's an exemplary young player. I think there's a lot of potential there. But anytime it comes to a nerve damage issue, you have to be concerned. And until he's on the field showing that he's 100% healthy, then you're looking for alternatives. And you now have your nickel corner. You have Denzel Ward. It's time to potentially address with that 26th overall pick, finding Ward's bookend. And a name that immediately comes to me would be Northwestern's Greg Newsome, with his ability to play in zone coverage. He is absolutely fantastic zone coverage with the way he's coached at Northwestern. When you look at playing cover 3, cover 4, he is absolutely spectacular in that regard. Was the number 1 graded coverage corner this past year, according to Pro Football Focus. So he's the guy that immediately jumps off my page. The concern with him is this. He's also been dinged for 3 years running at Northwestern. He's a bit of a slight frame. So can you invest in that type of player at that juncture? And there's going to be question marks. It doesn't matter which prospect you're looking at, because guys like J.C. Horn, who I think is absolutely spectacular, and you look at Patrick Surtain and maybe Caleb Farley, either they're going to be off the board or they have question marks. Farley in particular with the microdiscectomy to his lower back overall. Now you have to wonder, is he even going to be on the board because of medical concerns? And so when you start looking at it from that point of view, I think there's going to be someone capable that can step in immediately and play outside corner. But there are question marks, and it's going to be applicable whether we're talking about cornerback or defensive end.
But this is a tricky. This is a tricky spot. Not tricky. I mean, it's been navigated so well by Andrew Berry, Paul DePodesta, and everybody that you're in such a position of strength. And we've talked about this the last couple of weeks. where you can really go into the draft. And Nathan and I agree. Outside corner, when you talk about the amount of games that have been missed by not just Greedy, but Denzel as well, the games that have been missed, you have to add to that. And whether it's – and we do think probably if something happens in the first round, that'll be it. Second round for sure, you'll address outside corner. That'll be part of it. But also you are in a position, and they like what they've seen from Greedy Williams to this point in terms of his recovery, but you're in a position where you can take the best guy available. And you do all of that while realizing that you are going to have to be paying people on your roster relatively soon big money. In terms of keeping an eye on really two objectives for Andrew Berry, how do you grade the job he's doing on that front in terms of cap space going forward and an ability to be flexible to pay your own guys and still acquire and accrue talent?
Well, it's really interesting because I think most of us expected there to be certain contract restructures this offseason, specifically looking at the wide receivers and a few other veterans on the roster. But when you start looking at it, they never went that route. They decided instead to tack on voidable years, which is the new catchphrase for NFL free agency for anyone who's been paying attention this year, that essentially extends out those deals for multiple years so they can lessen the salary cap hit. So same goal accomplished, but through a different manner. And I find that interesting because something I was looking at this morning, if you look at the flexibility Cleveland had, and notice that was past tense, they came into this offseason with the most rollover cap space available. Now they are down to approximately $13 million in available salary cap space. You have to take into account $7 to $8 million of that is going to be accounted for with the NFL rookie class coming in, whomever they draft along the way. And so that rollover cap that you've had year after year after year that was originally started by Sashi Brown through John Dorsey into in the current regime, now you have to operate without it. And that's really what's the question mark, because if you go into 2022 and you don't have that same luxury, and right now Cleveland's the number one spending team in the NFL in overall numbers, then how do you address Baker Mayfield long-term? How do you address Nick Chubb long-term, Wyatt Teller, and so on and so forth? And that's why I think is going to be the next great step for Andrew Berry and how he orchestrates this roster and how they're going to make it not only just a short-term window to compete, which I believe they're in, but also long-term success beyond 2022 and further seasons.
So, Brent, with all of that being said, does that prohibit the Browns, as currently constructed, from pursuing Jadeveon Clowney, who they had a meeting with here? How do you see that playing out? Because I do think they need somebody else in that defensive end room who can be a credible veteran. There are plenty of options still. You've got Clowney, you've got an Alden Smith out there, Kerrigan's still out there who could fill that role. But how would you expect if they were to sign Clowney? A, do you think that'll happen? B, would that necessitate at that point restructuring? And there are many candidates that they could restructure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely correct. And there is flexibility. Don't get me wrong in stating that I say that it's dissipating when it comes to what we've grown accustomed to with salary cap space and rollover space and your traditional means to creating a room to sign players. And, obviously when you're a more successful team, you're investing more in certain players. You have better players overall, and so you have larger contracts. And then you start going the route of the New Orleans Saints where they work some type of voodoo and they can always seem to get under the salary cap. The thing with Clowney is this. It's an interesting decision because it's basically a three-prong answer, because the way you look at it is he has to fit in multiple different areas. One, does he fit within the roster the way you're looking at him? Is he a guy that's going to step in? I think most people, like yourself, Nathan, and me as well, are intrigued by the possibility of him playing opposite Myles Garrett. That's been there, obviously, for over a year within the organization. Two, you have to see how his medicals check out.
Sure.
He has landed on injured reserve multiple years. His knee has to check out, and the doctors have to give that approval. Then finally, you hit the financial aspect. What is he willing to take within an agreement? And that's really the question mark, because where you look at it, the defensive end market really took off this year. And some of the top guys, Hendrickson, Lawson, Watt, Ngakoue, even Aquara, are all making $12 million or more annually. So will he take something similar to what Carlos Dunlap just signed for, which is about $6.8 million annually? Where does he evaluate himself as an individual today as compared to a year ago? And to me, when you factor all those things in there and how they could potentially play out for Cleveland, I do not think he's going to end up signing there, and that they'll address the position and get more depth via the draft.
So do you think that they would also bring in a veteran and go in the draft, or do you think it's either Clowney or bust from a veteran standpoint? As I mentioned, some of the other names out there, and then if you're thinking draft, if you're thinking corner first round, who are some of the people you'd be looking at maybe in that second round that could fit that bill for the Browns?
Well, it depends on who's available, obviously, but
Sure.
If you're looking at Joe Tryon from Washington, Joseph Asai from Texas. I'm not exactly sure to get a read on Jason Owe out of Penn State because he's an awesome physical specimen, but you don't have the production. So is some team going to take a jump on him early based on the Danielle Hunter factor, or is it going to be him sliding down boards a little bit? Those are the guys that immediately jump to the forefront for me that would be in that potential second-round range that could step in and help because I think they do have depth there now. It's just short-term depth, whether you're talking about McKinley or Jackson. You don't know exactly what you're going to get out of Curtis Weaver. He's someone I was very high on a year ago in the draft. I know there was question marks, obviously, about the way he approaches his work, injuries, and so on and so forth, but he could get after it at Boise State. So does he step in and really flourish in the system? And these are all question marks that have to be answered. But if you add more and higher quality depth, the overall unit will be better as you rotate because one of the things we saw when Joe Woods was the secondaries coach at San Francisco when they were playing in Super Bowl 54 is the 49ers should come at you in waves. They were 2 to 3 deep at every position up front. And so if Cleveland could do something similar, I think that's the way they want to approach because that way you don't have to create a lot of pressure packages and just let your defensive linemen get after it. And so even if they don't take a defensive end early, as in first round, I very much see it being in play, not only further in the free agency, but in the draft as well.
All right, the other thing that we haven't gotten into, we focused a lot on the defense where there are big needs, but you talk succession planning. There is probably no bigger succession planning need on this roster, not to mention you want to add speed to this position, than wide receiver. And you talked about that in some of your tweets earlier today. Could we see the Browns go wide receiver round 1, round 2, certainly round 3 to plan for the fact that you're probably not going to be able to have 30+ million tied up in 2 guys in your receiver room in 2022?
It's a legitimate question. I think one we should bring to the forefront more often. It's not simply just because of the financial standing of Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. If you look at the way the Browns wide receiver core is currently constructed, and this became apparent especially against Kansas City in the playoffs, is that secondary constricted what Cleveland could do because the Browns lacked a true vertical threat to consistently drive the safeties deep within that scheme and have that threat as a big play. Yes, there's talent there, don't get me wrong. Rashard Higgins really showed well over the second half of last season. You have Landry and obviously Beckham if he's fully healthy. These guys can make plays, but you still need those complementary pieces. If you remember 2 years ago, Brashad Perriman, what he did for that offense once they brought him in, something similar of that ilk. So even if you're looking long-term, which you should be, but at the same time, short-term, you can still add the traits necessary to make your offense better. And that should be the goal at this point. You have your core, you have your philosophy, you have your approach. Now start putting in the ancillary pieces to make it even more dynamic, even tougher to defend. And so looking at it, when you have guys like a Rondale Moore or Elijah Moore or Terrace Marshall Jr. in the draft, even go down a little further with Shorts out of Auburn. These are guys that can fly, that can get open downfield and create separation. And I think that's going to be key, not only for future years when you eventually move on from your superstar wide receivers, but even in the short term when you're looking to do more offensively.
Yeah, Brent, I think what Andrew Berry's done here is they've put them, and they're not done. We mentioned you and Z went over kind of the defensive end situation, and you put yourself in a position where in the first round and the second round, if somebody with elite traits falls to you, you can make that pick and just get your team better, and that's an incredible thing. That means you have depth of talent across your roster, and you're not necessarily drafting for need, more so just drafting the best player, and that's how you build a team that's sustainable for a long time. Between now and the draft, as we turn our attention to the NFL at large, between now and the draft, what will you have your eye on in terms of NFL questions between now and then? We had a huge trade yesterday involving Sam Darnold, and Z and I at the top of the show kind of went over kind of some of the reasons why we think that happened. What else could you see happening from the league at large here in the next month leading up to the draft here in Cleveland?
Well, I don't think we're done with the quarterback jockeying. I really don't. And we saw the report today, and I'm sure you guys mentioned it about Adam Schefter, the Atlanta Falcons, now sitting in the driver's seat at that 4th overall pick, because you're looking at what do you do once those top 3 teams take their quarterbacks 1, 2, 3, and it's inevitable. We don't know exactly what the order is going to be, but we know it's going to happen. So Atlanta, do you eventually pull the trigger on Matt Ryan's replacement, or do you trade out for windfall of draft assets, whether it be from the Denver Broncos, the New England Patriots, Washington, or the Chicago Bears, and then allow them to get their quarterback of the future? And I find it fascinating because not only that, you mentioned yesterday's trade with the Jets moving Sam Darnold. Well, now you have another domino that needs to fall into place with Teddy Bridgewater, who they're trying to trade. Obviously, he might not have a starting opportunity, but if you're, say, I don't know, Pittsburgh, and you're looking for a quality backup behind a 39-year-old quarterback who's on his way out, then you have to weigh those options. And that's really what's interesting to me moving forward. We may not get the Deshaun Watson or the Russell Wilson deals, but to me, there's still going to be more movement at the quarterback position, starting with the draft and how teams are going to end up with those top 5 quarterback prospects. And to me, they're all legitimate first-round talents. And what the after effect is for the rest of the league when other quarterbacks start to move around, potentially veterans who might go into different situations and help those teams.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the notion that, like, you take Kyle at his word, but also realize it's very possible he's lying through his teeth on Jimmy Garoppolo, right? I mean, we had Davis was acquired from Tennessee and said, I intend on catching passes from Sam Darnold. The Jets last week put out a Instagram post of Sam Darnold on come get season tickets. He's traded yesterday. This is everything between after the Super Bowl and now. It's just all lies. So anything's possible. If the 49ers are picking a quarterback 3rd overall, I have a hard time believing he's going to sit, unless it is Lance and they just need him to get acclimated with the NFL, which could be.
You know, you're absolutely right. And I believe that, first of all, I'm not entirely buying the whole Mac Jones to San Francisco connection. I don't know why. To me, it doesn't feel right. You don't trade up for a player, trade 3 first-round picks for Mac Jones. I could be absolutely wrong. And we've seen him work wonders with guys like Matt Ryan and Matt Schaub and even Brian Hoyer in Cleveland. So maybe he is that type of guy that Kyle Shanahan prefers. But to me, he has a very similar argument to what we were just discussing about the Cleveland's offense. You want to expand on what you can do. You don't want to just continue doing the same thing over and over again. So if you have a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance who add a completely different dynamic to that position and within your overall scheme, to me, that's the right choice, especially with the upside they have at each of those positions. And I've always been an advocate when it comes to young quarterbacks. They play when they're ready to play. It doesn't matter if there's a veteran on the roster or not. And we saw this with Tyrod Taylor ahead of Baker Mayfield, and then again with Tyrod Taylor ahead of Justin Herbert. These guys are generally more prepared to play early than we've ever seen in the history of football, coming from the collegiate ranks to the professional ranks. They build around them most times, not all the time. Obviously, Sam Darnold can attest to that. But if you get these young guys that you believe are the face of your franchise and they show they're capable, it's time to move on. If you have Jimmy Garoppolo and it's Mac Jones or Justin Fields or whoever, and they immediately walk into that room and command it, whether it's in rookie camps, OTAs, or training camp, it's time to put them in that position. Then if they need more time, okay, that's awesome. Then you let them wait. But overall, I'm one of those proponents to let them play as soon as they're ready and putting no path in front of them, because let's be honest, gentlemen, there's no actual competition that's going to go on between these quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo's time is ticking, and he's going to need to find a new home sooner or later.
Brent, good stuff as always, bud. Appreciate having you on.
Thanks, gentlemen. You have a good one.
All right, Brent Sobleski joining us, NFL analyst for the Bleacher Report. Let me run something by you as someone who's broken bread with Kyle Shanahan. So there's this thinking that the reason he moved up to 3 is that the Jets knew who they're taking at 2, and he knew that they didn't want to trade out of it, knew that they were taking a quarterback, and that could very well be part of it. But he did the pro day thing, and he went to Mac Jones's. Mac Jones's and Justin Fields are on the same day. If you were Kyle Shanahan and you were choosing not between Mac Jones and Trey Lance, but between Trey Lance and Justin Fields, would you want to show your hand to a former assistant of yours as an offensive guru that you actually preferred one of these two guys over the guy they're thinking of in Zach Wilson. My point is, does Kyle Shanahan's mind think, hey, I'm going to go to Alabama, so just in case you're Robert Saleh and you go, man, Kyle knows offense and he likes this Mac Jones guy. We got to kick some tires on that. Does that send them off the scent? Does that make sense, or is that overthinking it?
Of course it makes sense. And yes, Kyle and as his father before him very much value secrecy pre-draft. And you saw him come out in response to the comments that were made by Chris Sims and be like, this is why I don't talk to Chris Sims, because it is his job to talk about these things. And so I can't tell him anything. So Chris Sims is speculating and knows nothing. Now, is it also possible that he led Chris Sims to Mac Jones without saying Mac Jones so that would be out there as well? And then he goes to this pro day.
Yeah.
Of course it's possible. Of course it is.
Yeah.
This is silly season. This is lying season in the
Yep.
NFL.
Just liar's poker.
Of course, because the only intel you can get is gossip. And so, the combine is ripe with that kind of gossip. And normally a lot of that is happening. This year you didn't get that. So that was a public way to say, to Robert Saleh, maybe you're missing Mac Jones. Maybe you guys should be thinking about Mac Jones at 2. It's another way to publicly say, I'm here, I'm not into Fields, and maybe he is. I'm not, it's also
don't know one way or another. Yeah.
It also goes back to the great scene in The Princess Bride that says, well, you know that I'm this kind of person, so maybe I'm at Mac Jones because I actually want to be at Mac Jones, which is why clearly I cannot choose the cup in front of me. But you know that about me, so clearly I cannot choose the cup in front of you.
You got to have that built up, that immunity to iocane powder. That's the key to it.
That is the key.
Key to the whole thing right there.
Yeah.
In such a situation. Mick Mixon will join us on the Panthers side of their situation coming up here in about 5 minutes. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Injuries during childbirth require experienced counsel. Call the lawyers at Elk & Elk for a clear answer as to what happened during your child's birth. Elk & Elk, a proud partner of the Cleveland Browns. Call 1-800-ELK, Ohio today. Let's head out on the hotline and visit with our good buddy Mick Mixon, voice of the Panthers, and yesterday executed one of the big trades this offseason in the NFL, bringing in Sam Darnold. Mick, your reaction to the trade that was brought in, and from our perspective, very little risk to this one. A second-round pick obviously has a lot of value, but you get a guy who was really coveted just a couple of years ago and still very, very young.
Kind of how I'm reading it too, and I appreciate you guys having me on. It's great to be on the radio in this amazing sports city of Cleveland, and all of us here in the Carolinas respect and appreciate the job you guys do in covering things on Cleveland Browns daily. And I think you said it very, very well, and it's Scott Fitterer mentioned it yesterday. He said this still opens up a lot of opportunities for the Panthers. It doesn't hamstring you to where you can't do some dealing, and I think the biggest piece that Carolina has to figure out now is the Teddy Bridgewater thing. So what would you guys do? Do you keep Teddy Bridgewater and let Darnold and Bridgewater slug it out, or and possibly have a backup quarterback if Darnold wins the job that's making 3 times what your starting quarterback makes, or do you try to offload two-glove Teddy and see where that avenue might take you?
What did you think of last season and the performance that you did get from Teddy Bridgewater and this offense? And what do you think the upside in Darnold is for this organization?
Oh, my gosh. Well, at the risk of you getting me in trouble with my employers, I'm going to try to answer your question as honestly as I can, because I think Matt Rule would say the same thing. I think that by any measured analysis, some of the shine kind of got off the Teddy Bridgewater penny, and it was not all his fault, but the game at Minnesota, the Panthers just had some eviscerating, gut-wrenching pathos in these close losses, and it wasn't, as I say, it wasn't all Teddy Bridgewater's fault. Teddy had to play great at times to give the Panthers an opportunity to win some of these games, but to be so close in so many late-game situations, yet not closing more deals than that. It's what all quarterbacks sign up for. It's gonna reflect on you. Everybody keeps score. We want to know how many game-winning drives do you have? How are you in the fourth quarter? How are you in under 2 minutes? And so it's not that the Panthers are out of love with Teddy Bridgewater. It's just that it's the National Football League, and you gotta have a lead singer in the band.
Yeah, you do, Mick, and I guess what I was curious about, and we do this show in the great state of Ohio, as you know, and I was thinking about Justin Fields, and I thought, boy, I don't see him getting past 8, and I really would have liked that fit for them with him down there at number 8. But then I wondered, well, maybe they're hearing that they won't have an opportunity there, that he may go someplace above that, maybe even whatever Atlanta does at number 4 and trading out of that. What were you hearing anything on that front with Fields, and does this take them out? I would assume this would take them out of quarterback at 8, although I've seen reports today that it won't.
The second one, I choose the second one. It doesn't take you out of it, because here's why I say that. The old Carolina Panthers under the previous owner, glaciers moved down continents faster than the Panthers made some key decisions on free agency, trades. The Panthers were just adhered to the philosophy of run it, play good defense. Hopefully the other team will lose it, or you'll have a chance to win it. And that worked. The Panthers had some good years. But this is a new day. This is a brand new day in the Carolinas. This new coaching staff is young. Scott Fitterer, the new GM, is young, and it's all about metrics, data analysis, risk tolerance, sports science, nutrition, sports psychology, exercise, stretching, hydration, all these things. So I could see anything happening. I could see the Panthers trading up. I could see the Panthers trading back. I could see another quarterback being brought in. I could see it not happening. It's just Scott Fitterer has said as much, guys. He said we want to be in every conversation from here on out.
Yeah, and they're in the division with the defending Super Bowl champions, and so to get into the conversations and to get this program where they want it, and in some ways you could look at it and say, they're in a good spot, right? The Saints, the Drew Brees era has ended. There's a little uncertainty there. The Matt Ryan era is about to end in Atlanta. And Tom Brady, while he continues to defy everything we seem to know about human evolution and aging and all of those things, there is a finite window, regardless of how good TB12 is.
Hope.
Yeah, there is a finite window to that. So if you're the Panthers, you actually are kind of in a position that I felt the Browns were in a couple of years ago when Flacco was getting to the end of his run and Roethlisberger looked like he was getting there, and Dalton in Cincinnati, and we've seen an unbelievable turnover in this division with the MVP and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. But the NFC South is shaping up for Carolina that if they can start to build that foundation in a year or two, they have a chance to really springboard forward. Is that kind of the thinking right now?
Well, you said it. I mean, I could say it differently than you just said it, but not as eloquently. And I'm glad you mentioned the greatly detested Atlanta Falcons, our I-85 rival, because I think that, and all credit to the Bucks. The Bucks just went modular home, not built to last. They just went out and got some sod, some plants, brought a home in, trucked it in, set it down on a foundation, put some landscape lighting in it, and boom, they got yard of the month. They did it. So all credit to them. But do you really want to be? Is that the model that you want? I put to you that you're exactly right. That you'd rather be the Panthers than you would be Tampa Bay, even though their Super Bowl trophy will glitter for a long time in the trophy case. But moving forward, you'd rather be Carolina than you would be any of the other three teams in our division.
Yeah, you certainly like the foundation there, and you like what you've heard from what we've heard from Matt Rule. The other part of this, when I heard this deal today, yesterday, I understand it's a complicated matter, and we discussed it a little bit off the top of our show. Is the incredible story around Deshaun Watson, and every time we would have somebody on, Mick, they would say Carolina for Deshaun, and we know the proximity to Clemson, and we know the way that he is thought of in that part of the country. And there just is so much. There's so much swirling around him right now that it almost seems like. Well, it doesn't almost seem like it is very clear that he's impossible to be moved right now, even if you wanted to. You just don't know what you're getting in that front. Were you hearing that as well around Watson in terms of before all of this that Carolina was a place that would covet him?
Actually, exactly. And I've got no sourcing in the building. I think I was when the whole COVID thing hit, I think I was a tier 11 employee. So
we know what that means.
We were banned from the building, Mick. We didn't even get to. We got sent home.
Banned.
Yeah.
I know the feeling. I get it. But peering in on the outside, looking in, peering in at this through the foggy glass, trying to see what's going on. You know, Joe Person had a story. And just a news cycle or two before the news started breaking out of Houston around Deshaun Watson, and the story was that the Panthers Person story was that Deshaun Watson is option A, B, and C for the Carolina Panthers. And then a couple of days later, we know what we now know, which is there appear to be some issues. So I cannot believe how things have changed with that. And I think Darnold is, there'll be some people who will say, well, the Panthers wanted Matthew Stafford, the Panthers wanted Deshaun Watson. So you ask the head cheerleader out and she says no, and then you ask the captain of the girls soccer team out, she says no. So then you end up, you go down with your third choice. But I mean, my golly, Sam Darnold, good feet, athletic, maybe not a burner, but can get the ball down the field. And I think what's most exciting about this is that I think the Panthers are going to surround him with some weapons, with some pieces to allow him to really flourish as an NFL triggerman.
One of the pieces they had last year who played very well, Curtis Samuel, he was one of the decisions obviously they made in free agency to not bring him back. They've got 2,000-yard guys in Robbie Anderson, obviously, and on the other side, DJ Moore, who I think is a budding superstar. Do you think at 8 now, do they say, all right, we're going to give Darnold a rip and try to get him another weapon in what is, a historically top-heavy wide receiver draft?
Yeah, isn't it asinine? How many times have you guys heard and we've heard too that, well, we're going to take the best player available. We're going to be loyal to the board. And that's never made great sense to me. I guess there's some wisdom in it, but it seems to me like what you want is a team. You don't want a collection of the best players that were available. You want a team. And so the Panthers have some needs. There's a need at corner. There's a need in the O-line, and there's a need in the D-line. And some other needs as well. When you win 5 ball games, probably got a lot of needs.
Sure.
But I think it would surprise me, and I don't think the Panthers will reach for a tight end. But in this Joe Brady offense, a pass-catching tight end, maybe in the later rounds, could see it being an O-lineman or an edge pass rusher early in the draft. What do you guys do the mock draft thing? What are y'all hearing there?
Well, we just saw it used to be a quarterback always to the Panthers, and then
always quarterback.
Post the trade, we've seen McShay, who had Patrick Surtain, the second, the top-rated corner in this draft, according to him, go to that spot. And I did see another one that had, I think, Devontae Smith, the wide receiver, the Heisman winner out of Alabama, going to the Panthers at 8 as well. Kyle Pitts would seem to me to be a natural. I mean, the hole that has been left on that team with Greg Olson's aging and thus departure from Carolina is big. I mean, you guys threw the ball quite a bit last year, and Logan Thomas, I think, led the team. Not Logan Thomas. Your tight end led the team. Ian Thomas, I'm sorry, led the team with 145 yards. And too bad Kyle Pitts not likely to still be around at number 8 because he'd be a nice fit for you guys.
Oh man, I know, and Joe Brady's offense is a thing of beauty. The way the Panthers substitute, it's like the daggum. I mean, it's like this shell game, this 3-card Monty, trying to figure out the defense tries to figure out what's the personnel grouping, what are the Panthers going to do. Carolina does a lot at the line of scrimmage, so Darnold he'll have to get with the academic side of it, which I'm sure he will probably is already doing that.
Mick, this has been a real treat. Can I be so bold as to say that the next time that we play in Charlotte, which I'm not sure where that is and when the schedule lines up that way, can I be so bold as to invite us out to dinner with you in Charlotte? Can we do that?
That would be great.
Yes, but I'm old, so we eat early. So
that's fine.
We accommodate the legends, Mick.
At 5:30.
It's called legend time.
All right. You guys y'all aren't right, but we've known that for a while now.
Mick, great talking to you, man. Appreciate your time.
Yes.
My pleasure. Thanks for the phone call.
That was fun.
Great.
A lot of fun and a lot of interest there. And that does seem, those are the things. It's the Watson thing.
The option A, B,
happened.
C. He was option A, B, C.
Yeah. The Watson thing, and then everyone's scrambling, responding to it.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers has a post-football plan. Question is, how far post-football does it happen? And could it happen right away? We get into that coming up next. Hit some mock drafts at the bottom of the hour. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily. Beau Bishop from my great friends at Weather Seal Home Services. Do you need a roof replacement? Would you like to replace your roof for the last time? I know that you would. That's the benefit of choosing metal roof from Weather Seal. Metal roof technology, materials, styles, and colors have improved significantly. They are beautiful, nearly indestructible, and with Weather Seal, affordable. Plus, with new metal roof technology, Weather Seal includes a 6-inch gutter upgrade and up to 7 years, 0 interest financing. That's right, 7 years, 0 interest on that. Call my guys. Do it right now, 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. That is 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. Aaron Rodgers' guest starring hosting job on Jeopardy was last night, was the first episode of that. Of course, it was taped a long time ago. A couple of highlights, including this one on Fortune Favors the Bald for $600. Here's Aaron Rodgers hosting.
Fortune favors the bald 600.
He may not love being bald, but he created and stars in a show that debuted on HBO in 2000. So that's pretty good. Brandon?
It was Larry David.
Yes.
Yes.
That's pretty good job of him.
Pretty good. Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Fantastic.
That's good. And then in final Jeopardy, one of the contestants was stumped, but not necessarily. Still gets a pretty good laugh out of this one. Let's have a listen.
Over to our two-day champion on the end. Scott, did you come up with the correct response? Who wanted to kick that field goal? That is a great question. Should be correct, but unfortunately for this game today, that's incorrect.
So, of course, this in reference to the decision from LaFleur to kick the field goal rather than have Rodgers take a shot at it, and Rodgers wouldn't get another shot at it, and that was it. He was on Good Morning Football this morning and reiterated that it was still a dumb decision to do, and it's a pretty remarkable thing how long he will hold this grudge and how much he will publicly just eviscerate their front office. I mean, he will just forever their coaching in front office publicly. You got me?
Were we waiting for a little more? Was there? I didn't know if we were getting the Good Morning Football.
I said something to you. No,
I knew you said it to me about how long you'd hold the grudge, but I thought we had the Good Morning Football audio.
No, I was waiting for your response. We do not have Good Morning Football audio. I was waiting for your response to his grudges.
Are you kidding? He goes on the McAfee show and talks about his contract and the draft that happened prior to last season every time.
Yep.
He'll hold a grudge.
No, it's so he then was on Instagram yesterday. We don't have this audio either, Z.
Okay.
He was on Instagram yesterday with his girlfriend Shailene Woodley, the actress, and is going into details about how he would like to host Jeopardy when his playing career is done, and says and lays out kind of the plan how his football season is 6 months, and then the other 6 months of the year, Jeopardy records. I want to say it's like 20-some weeks. They record a bunch of shows over a couple of days. It's a ridiculous schedule. And he said, I could very easily do it. And I think he's serious. And I don't think people realize how great a job that is.
One, he's clearly serious. Two, the reason that he's hosting Jeopardy right now, that has to be an Aaron Rodgers initiated thing, right? They can't just assume that every
him or his agent,
celebrity is into Jeopardy. So he made it known, hey, this is something I would like to do. He is now taking a step further. This is his audition. It's going well. It's a great gig. That gig, Pat Sajak, they've had some of the greatest.
That's the best one.
Just ridiculous gigs. Ridiculous.
So there was reports that in the end, Trebek was making 9 figures hosting Jeopardy. 9er.
Wait, what?
Per year.
How's that possible?
Yes. Are you kidding? It's on in every market in the world. That show is.
Yeah, but
you think syndication works pretty good on that? Yeah. There were reports he was making 9
if I'm not mistaken,
figures. Now that's Trebek at the end, but still.
Hold on. If I'm not mistaken, and maybe this is where my private school has failed me because I AP'd out of math, so I stopped taking math at the age of 18. But I believe 9 figures begins at $100 million.
Correct. Yeah. That has been some of the chatter around Mr. Trebek in the end.
Yeah, I don't know that I can believe that.
And
I don't know that I can believe that.
that seems like an exorbitant amount of money. But we do know that, this is why when you do best jobs in entertainment, Wheel of Fortune's number one. That's the number one job in entertainment because it is tens of millions. It's about 4 days a week or 4 days a month that you're working. You tape all the shows in like four days a month, and there's no pronunciation. I don't have to worry about adding the right italices on a name or a phrase from history. I don't have to do that. All I got to do is say, show us an S, and then, here's the S's. I mean, it's the best, easiest gig for the money. Another great one is The Price is Right, is another great one. But that takes a little more entertaining, and that shows an hour as opposed to a half hour on Wheel of Fortune.
So here's what I think. I believe that Jeopardy is the greatest gig. Number one, first of all, because you just introduced the fact to me that it could be worth $100 million a year. Number two,
I imagine there's similar price tags.
It's intellectually stimulating. Wheel of Fortune, at some point you're going to get tired of the bozos. You're going to get tired of just the nonsense of it. Jeopardy, you're probably going to learn something on every show. The caliber of the contestant, I'd say, is pretty high. And I think you probably get some real good, some good banter, some good facts. I also would imagine that you are getting a teleprompter in front of you that's going to have this all phonetically laid out for you. And so the pronunciation, and by the way, you're paying me $100 million to pronounce words correctly. So I'm going to do it.
You have to remember that sum was not the regular sum, and it had to do with the primetime specials they did because they had the Tournament of Champions guys that made all the money on the ABC. So that was it. Yeah, it's around 10.
There's six figures. There's 7, 8, 9. There's tons of. He's probably never been below 7 figures.
Yeah,
at least in the modern era.
Never. No.
So
Sajak would be the same with less work.
Yeah, but I also
just pal around.
At some point, I feel like you get. I gotta go. I don't know. I feel like it's boring. Jeopardy is a stimulating show.
I feel like your personality would fit better with both Price is Right and Wheel than Jeopardy. Because Jeopardy, there's not a lot of tomfoolery. And you love tomfoolery.
But Trebek
you
is
thrive
sarcastic.
In tomfoolery.
He'll throw some dicks.
Right, but it's tight. It's a tight window. Like, you don't have a whole lot of time for it. We got a lot of things to get through. Like, Wheel and Price is Right, you could run amok.
Oh, you can banter.
Oh.
Well, listen, my sideline reporting has trained me for quick ins and outs. So I'm ready for Jeopardy.
I don't know if you'd have the discipline for it.
And
I don't know if
you'd
have the
rolls
discipline
through the
for
stop
Jeopardy.
sign.
First of all, that's only
Gibby,
when
what do you think?
Taped
Would
was
he have
ahead
the
of real life.
Would he have the discipline? If you and I were representing him and we were to have him host one of these entertainment shows, see, I would want the best for my client, and I would want to put him in a position to succeed, and I would want to send him to a place where tomfoolery would thrive. And I just feel like Jeopardy, it's too tight. There's no room for it. There's no jocularity. Like, sure, tight, sarcastic here and there, but it's got to be done quick. And I feel like you love to play. You love to play.
Yeah, stretches it out.
What did I do?
Yeah.
He's a sandbox. He wants to be in a sandbox.
Zegura, I need this interview to be 8 minutes. And at the 12-minute mark, I'm still trying to get you to rest.
Dude, we're connecting as human beings.
TV is timing.
We're connecting as human beings.
I think you would flourish on The Price is Right.
By the way, I've done tons of live TV.
The Price is Right would be your show.
I like how you think this is a slight at you. It's not. It's the highest form of compliment.
Yes.
You would be on The Price is Right. You would just
get me on.
Flourish. Your
Cleveland
interaction with people, the putting.
Oh.
Just like remember when Bob Barker would make the putts? Like, can you imagine you having the Barker's beauties hold the mic and then make the little putt?
Oh, yeah.
I dated Bob Barker's niece in college, Amy Barker. There you go, baby.
We need to start a podcast series entitled Gibbe.
Yes.
The stories you don't know.
Yes.
Or the whole story.
The true Hollywood story.
I don't know about that one.
The true Hollywood story of Gibbe.
Yes.
That's what we need. Yeah.
Going back to, like, The Price is Right. That's your show. Wheel
That's
of
your
Fortune
spot.
still
That's your
has a
spot.
time, like at the end, if they're in the middle of a puzzle, they gotta you gotta speed it up and you gotta go.
Speed him up.
And that just, I believe that hampers you and your ability to thrive.
That would hamper him. What about the dating game, like the old dating game, the old Chuck Woolery?
I would have had a great time back in 2 and 2.
I think you would have a good time with that.
Let's go.
Yeah, back in
Talk
2 and
about
2. I
the
think you did well there.
dates.
Family Feud.
Oh boy, I feel like you can't be the Richard Dawson Family Feud anymore. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. No, I think the Family Feud would be a good one for me. I'm good with a look off to the camera, acknowledge the third.
Yeah, the old
I
fourth
feel like
wall.
I could thrive
Break
in
it
that
down.
window. Yeah, I could do that. That would be the one for me. Would be that one. All right, good fun there. We'll have a little fun on the mock draft front. Some stuff coming in on that front after all of the trades have gone through. We will get to that coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily. Beau Bishop here from my great friends at Northeast Factory Direct. And if you're sick and tired of your outdated kitchen, this is the perfect time to upgrade. Very simply, go to Northeast Factory Direct. They got high-quality, name-brand furniture and hot tubs. I was just out at that center last week out there. Men are fantastic selection to choose from. They're about half the price of the fancy retail stores. But at Northeast, you can also get high-quality cabinets for 60 to 70% less than at the expensive kitchen remodeling centers. It's really simple. Make an appointment, bring in some basic measurements. They're going to walk you through everything. And the best part is the appointment and the design are free. Northeast Factory Direct cuts out all the costs associated with traditional stores, so you can buy nice stuff at really incredible prices. They also have 0% financing available, so if you're thinking about remodeling your kitchen, it is simple. Go to northeastfactorydirect.com and schedule your appointment today. More mock drafts coming in. This one from ESPN front office insider, former NFL GM, said he would do, if he were the GM, for each team selecting in the first round. You can pay a little bit of attention to these now because we are mostly through free agency, but this is a pretty common theme now as we tend to be centering around defensive end and corner, and Jalen Phillips is the player that grabs his attention. His story is an interesting one in that he is a guy who retired at UCLA and then returned and transferred to Miami. He was a big-time recruit and played at Miami. His physical stuff is off the charts, a ton of talent there. But Jalen Phillips is the selection according to this mock draft, my friend, for us at 26.
Yeah, and Phillips, after retiring at UCLA, returning, transferring, 15.5 tackles for loss last year, 8 sacks in his final college season. He had that unbelievable pro day workout. He likes to line up in that wide 9, which is what we're going to play with our defensive front, so he's comfortable doing that. He's comfortable dropping. That's going to be – there are a lot of people who believe he is the most talented pass rusher in this draft, but you've got to be comfortable with the medicals, and you've got to be comfortable with the concussion history. And – look, he came back. He did it.
It's a lot to ask on a first-rounder, brother.
It is. And so he's a guy, but maybe that's why he's there at 26, because now kind of the talk is he would be the one, if there was a defensive end this year that was going to go in the top 10. It seems like he's gaining steam. Kwity Paye's losing a little bit of steam. Rousseau's losing steam. So I don't know.
Who knows?
The Browns, I know, are so diligent in what it is that they do and what they would want to understand about a potential prospect that they are going to use a first-round selection, which is obviously an incredibly valuable asset on. So I'm very curious to see, how this shakes out and how things shake out for Jalen Phillips. He could come to the NFL and end up having no issues and become a star. He could also be a guy who, after a year or two, is unable to play. We saw Jordan Cameron, who had that great season with the Browns in 2013, goes to the Pro Bowl, and his career's over in a couple of years because of concussions. So it's a pretty scary thing if you ask me.
It doesn't seem like it would fit with the way that our front office is made up and their thinking. Just for everything that you just laid out. It doesn't seem like it. I mean, I just think that we are, like, risk is not one of the 3 Ps. It's not. So I just don't. To me, I don't know about the fit for it. I love the idea of best player available. We've talked about that a lot, but I don't see it with Phillips at 26 just because of the risk, and I think it's a tremendous one. And look, we still have Grant Delpit coming off an Achilles, and we have Greedy Williams coming off of a nerve. Like, those are 2 second-round picks that are coming off major injuries that miss seasons. So I just don't know that would fit with the line of thinking. But who knows? We're a long ways out, and the one thing that you can tell is that everything that's being said right now is frankly not true. Some other notable takeaways from this mock draft: Mac Jones continuing to go to San Francisco at number 4. Trey Lance to Atlanta Trey Lance at number 4 to Atlanta. They're now looking to move that pick. So if it is Lance at 4 to Atlanta, it likely won't be the Falcons taking him. And Mac Jones at 3. I just don't buy it. I haven't. There's nothing that it's amazing to me how, and especially with Fields, and there's a lot to the Fields criticism that's happened over the last couple of weeks, but this notion that Fields, is some 1 or 2 read quarterback. How many times did Mac Jones have to go through his progressions with Waddle and Smith? in 1 year at Alabama.
Wide open, right? Wide open, easy.
Correct. Yeah. And most of his work is done between the hashes. Most of it. There aren't a lot of outside edge throws in their offense. So they're mostly those guys coming across, and he hits them in stride. And give him credit for that. But the notion that Kyle, I just find it so hard to believe that Kyle would give up all of that to take a guy that from an elite trait. You and I talk about elite traits all the time. There's not a single elite trait to Mac Jones. None.
Well, he would say that processing and precision would be, if he takes him 3, he believes that his processing, his mental processing, and his accuracy, his precision throwing the football are elite, and that's why he's taking them. And that is ultimately, right, the essence of great quarterback plays, the ability to decipher what the defense is doing to you, know where to go with the ball, and then deliver the ball accurately and on time versus the coverage you're facing. So if that's what he believes, that if that's what he thinks are the elite traits that he covets the most, maybe that's why they go that way. What I would say is it's wild. I mean, Field Yates, as we are talking right now, just tweeted out, all the momentum is seemingly pushed towards this top 3. Jags, Lawrence, Jets, Zach Wilson, Niners, Mac Jones. It's starting to feel more and more like the draft starts at pick 4. And maybe that's what Kyle wants you to think. I just have a hard time believing that. And, you know, you've heard, did you hear today that the Jets said, Joe Douglas said that if they weren't able to get, it basically confirmed they're taking Wilson, but they said if it weren't for, you know, if they weren't picking second in this draft and they were picking third or later, they would have just gone with Sam Darnold. So you have one GM who's saying it's these two guys or nobody for me in this draft. And then you have another group, Kyle and John Lynch, who believe that 3 1s, there's somebody in this draft that's worth 3 1s to get there. Now, I've seen some Mac Jones. I have not done, this is not based off of deep film study or anything like that. It's based off watching him a few times, watching his pro day, and seeing a couple of their games because Alabama was on TV a lot. He reminds me of, is he a better Andy Dalton? I mean, I get a lot of Andy Dalton-ish vibes from him. I don't get.
So somebody say Mark Bulger.
Okay. And Mark Bulger, prolific,
Matt
put up
Schaub.
some good numbers, very accurate. Matt Schaub was more of at least prototype from the size. Bulger was small, was very smart, very accurate. That's why Mike Martz liked him. Very tough. He might be a slightly more mobile version of that, but there's nothing that makes me say this guy is the next big thing.
No,
not elite arm strength.
And I think it's a little disingenuous, when you throw in, this notion of, like Matt Ryan, like he's not Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan.
He's not. That's not what he is. Like, So to me, it feels like Lance would make sense for Kyle. That to me seems like the one that would make the most sense. He spent a lot of his time with his back to the defense, those type of things. Get him there in a year, has some elite traits. Justin Fields we know has elite traits. I don't see any elite traits with Mac Jones. To your point, maybe it's processing, maybe you love it. But when you are throwing to those two receivers, who both likely will go in the top 10, behind that offensive line, I don't know. I don't see it. Couple other things he has here. He has Justin Fields to Carolina even after the trade to get Sam Darnold, which I can't imagine. This one kind of ends all of the conversation, the legitimacy of this one, is the notion that Kyle Pitts would last to 12. I don't see any scenario how he is not the first or second non-quarterback off the board. None. I see none.
None. He is not getting past
5, 6. He's not getting past 6.
6. No, Carolina. I
don't see it, Coach. I don't see him getting past 5 or 6. I don't
see it either.
Let alone going all the way to 12.
No way. No way. I mean, he even says Eagles fans would be doing backflips if this happened, because it's not going to happen. So
No.
That's
No.
I don't see that being
he would go to
realistic
Miami.
whatsoever.
He would go to Carolina. He could go to Cincinnati. I don't want him in Cincinnati, but if I were Cincinnati, I'd take him over Penei Sewell.
Same. Absolutely. Absolutely. When you have somebody broke this down, and I thought it was pretty good. They said when you have, let's say you had Chase or Pitts, when you have three options who can all win in Higgins, Boyd, Chase, or Pitts, you can get the ball out quicker. You can be more proficient even with lesser protection. And so that's ridiculous to me. Get superstars. Those guys look like superstars. By the way, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to change to a different subject, so go if you were saying on that. Go ahead.
Oh, real quick, I was just saying, we had Mitchell Schwartz, Alex Mack, and Joe Thomas.
Right, but we didn't have the players.
And correct.
Yeah, I agree.
If you don't have the quarterback and you don't have the players, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
They've got the quarterback, but you got to give him.
They've got the quarterback, and they've got some skill on the edge.
Give him some more. Charles Davis, by the way, says Mike Shanahan never once talked to anybody at Vandy, kept their people away, never worked out Jay Cutler before drafting him just to keep their interests hidden from other teams. That's where Kyle Shanahan comes from. And we told you that earlier on this program. Another little bit
before we even read that.
Before we
laid that all out for you.
Yes.
Scores, kids.
He said now he's talking Kyle Pitts. If someone wants him, you might want to go up there and get him. If you let him sit there and get to 8, Carolina, where they kept their first-round pick, I could see them sprinting to the podium. Absolutely, which is what we just talked about with Mick Mixon. And then finally, this is not as good of a note. From Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio just tweeted out, followed the conclusion of Tony Busby, the attorney who represents the now 22 women.
Yeah.
His quote was, based on today's press conference, I do not believe the league can avoid placing Deshaun Watson on the commissioner exempt list.
I don't think that this Busby guy's stuff alone can. Florio follows it closer, but we're headed there, which is why Carolina can't make the deal.
I don't think he necessarily wrote that as clear.
Stalemate.
He's saying Deshaun Watson, the league, based on today, the league should be compelled to put him on the exempt list now.
Oh, I see. Based on this, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's
he used
where
the
you're
double
headed,
negative.
certainly.
He used
Still
don't
so much
and avoid. He should have just said, based on today's press conference, I think the league must place Deshaun Watson on the commissioner exempt list. That's what he's saying.
Yes, that's what he's saying. Okay, that's a much more clear and succinct way. You went to a better school than he did, I think. I don't know where Florio went. I'm sure he went to. He could have been.
He's a lawyer.
I don't know. Flip your. Was an attorney. Yeah, that's true. All right, much more to come. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, coming up tomorrow on the program, Mark Sessler will join us, the NFL.com's great friend of the program. He'll join us as we will chat. It is interesting, if you think about the shows we've done in previous years, and you think about where we were drafting in previous years, there was so much conjecture, and you could almost pick apart who we were going to be choosing from. It's almost impossible now when you're picking at 26. Like, each one of these mock drafts can change so dramatically by the actions of the rest of the league that impact what you're going to do at 26. It's really impossible.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, but it's impossible.
I think we can get
who are we going to pick?
Buckets of names and positions, and that's what you deal with. And you got to let it unfold. You don't dictate the draft this year. The draft, well, it dictates to you.
Yeah, that's right. And there's still so much that could be. It's a good job of you. There's so many things that could happen between now. You think of this Darnold trade that happened. There could be some more quarterback movement leading up to it. There could be some more player movement. We've got our own things to address. So this will be a really interesting couple of weeks here leading up to the draft. But the mocks are going to be very, very difficult to pin down when you talk about 26. And if there's anything to learn from the program today, it is believe nothing. That's really the lesson of the day. Believe nothing other than Trevor Lawrence and probably Zach Wilson, but Trevor Lawrence for sure. That's about the only thing I think you know for sure.
And if you're going out with Charlotte legend Mick Mixon, you're going out early.
Going out early, Coach. 4:30. Beautiful.
It's beautiful. Little happy hour with Mick with the Mixter.
God, that's going to be fun. I can't wait to do that.
Same.
All right. Next level coming up next.